A war that has been on for more than a year and seems to have no end in sight. Each passing day has only caused the battleground to intensify further. Amidst the constant efforts from both sides to overpower the other, Russia went all out to launch a rather exhaustive missile attack on several of Ukraine's cities, including Kyiv, Odessa, Kharkiv, and others. 81 Kinzhal hypersonic missiles were shot by the Russian side, which is probably the highest that Ukraine has had to bear at one go in several weeks. While the shelling led to massive blackouts in 3 cities, the nuclear power station at Zaporizhzhia was stuck, leading to a power outage there for several hours. Now there are also updates as far as the active battleground in the war zone is concerned. Meanwhile, as far as strategy is concerned, Russia has taken out all their weaponry and equipment out of a crucial military base in Crimea. The reasons and consequences behind this move is yet to be gauged and determined. For now, it is being anticipated that Russia will probably pour in these forces to another critical battleground to reinforce and strengthen it. Remember that Russia had captured Crimea from Ukraine back in 2014 and since then has continued holding their claims on it being the international circuit. So what really is happening as far as Crimea is concerned, and how should we read Moscow's moves? We have our colleague Sanjay Suri, who's now standing by. Sanjay, first things first, what are you hearing from sources or others on the ground? What really is happening in Crimea?
Well, we have some evidence that has been shared suggesting that the Russian forces have vacated a certain camp within Crimea. Well, that is not to say that they are abandoning Crimea. This clearly is pointing to some sort of redeployment. Crimea is the big prize for Ukraine to get and for Russia to keep, but it is not on the front line. It is not where immediate hostilities would ensue were they to begin, and they are expected to begin fairly soon. Clearly, the Russians are redeploying their forces to positions that they feel will be in the front line of an anticipated Ukrainian counteroffensive. This is clearly Russian preparation on way.
Sanjay, I essentially want to understand, because you're saying it doesn't look like they've abandoned Crimea, but even by the images that CNN has also put out, why would Moscow want to empty out a key base in Crimea?
Well, they're not emptying out a base in the sense that they're abandoning a base or abandoning a position. They're merely redeploying. This would have been a decision taken by generals based on strategic considerations. There is always a finite level of resources, and there will be clear options where they are deployed best, where they see the immediate threat. Clearly, they believe that it's the forward positions that are more threatened rather than the base that's been emptied out. It could have been simply a base that has been feeding the front lines and has been created to feed the front lines, and that position is now upon us, and the Russians are moving their troops. They're also reported to be strengthening their forces in Mariupol, and Mariupol again is certainly prime within the sights of the Ukrainians for any counteroffensive. These are, of course, places that Putin visited in recent weeks. He visited Crimea, he visited Mariupol, clearly giving a message to commanders there that they should be prepared to fight. Russian intelligence clearly is pointing to an imminent counteroffensive from the Ukrainians, and this kind of redeployment is a move to strengthen Russian defense.
That's exactly what I wanted to understand, Sanjay, that as per these reports, we're understanding that Russia, as you're saying, is redeploying its forces. They're intensifying their forces as far as areas like Mariupol is concerned. Why do areas like Mariupol gain significance?
Well, Mariupol was, as we know, the scene of an intense battle at the very start of the war. That is where the Russians had advanced in February of 2022. They advanced very fast and very far in that area. They couldn't meet much resistance. The Ukrainians were not prepared. There were just some local forces there without any artillery or heavy armor to defend them. And the steel works in Mariupol became really one of the bloodiest battlegrounds of this war. Before, of course, we come to Bakhmut. But clearly, Mariupol is in Luhansk region, and that is a region that the Ukrainians have been targeting for recapture. There is a lot of evidence that Ukrainian people who are loyal to Ukraine, and that appears to be the majority in Mariupol, are reporting oppression under Russian occupation, and clearly they are crying out for relief, and for that reason primarily the Ukrainians want to target Mariupol. They do want to recapture
Yeah.
it. Ultimately, of course, they want to take back Crimea, but Crimea is as yet a distant goal.
Sanjay, lastly, I also want to understand, and you touched upon this a short while ago, when we talk about redeployment or trying to empty areas like Crimea, is that an indication of the growing aggression as far as the Ukrainian forces is concerned?
Well, certainly anticipation of a new offensive. This is now a matter of positioning. Generals will look at the terrain, they will look where their forces are prepared, and to handle any assault or any offensive, they will take into account intelligence reports that will be on the ground intelligence, human intelligence, artificial intelligence, aerial intelligence. A lot of this kind of information is collated, as a result of which generals will take their decisions where they need to redeploy. So it is not the case that they are emptying out a base, they are clearly moving troops from one base to other positions. And this is based on intelligence, and everything is pointing now to an imminent counteroffensive from the Ukrainians. We've been hearing about this spring offensive from the Russians earlier in this year, and that did come.
Sure.
The reason we didn't hear more of it was that it didn't go very far, it didn't go very fast. It did not turn out to be very effective. They are still struggling to take Bakhmut, and that's 10 months into the war. So that spring offensive did come, but it was low key because it was not effective. But now everything is pointing to, well, if you want to call it, a summer offensive.